Hey guys, it's Easter Egg Productions here. I'm Kale the Quick. We're on another episode of Sounding Board, the wonderful show where we just show up and, we're just bored as shit and we talk about random crap until we find out something fun. I'm here today with a new guy, Lando here. Hey, say hi.
Hey.
And we have also D-Man, who hasn't been on Sounding Board, but we've known him for a while. Great guy. Say hi, D-Man.
Ahoy, hoy.
All right. And we also are joined by Dionin.
Hey, guys.
And Surrealism, our
Hello.
lovely people who have been around for Sounding Board for a while, chock full of great ideas. I think, Dio, you look like you have something you want to bring up. What is that?
Very much so. I want to bring up the sort of punk subculture of fiction. Specifically, like the kind of genres like steampunk and cyberpunk.
Okay. I've heard of steampunk and cyberpunk. D-Man, do you know any examples about those for our audience at home, of course?
Oh, for our audience at home, well, I guess I would just be just as clueless as the audience at home.
Well, Dio, then what do you mean by what exactly are the established punk genres? Because it sounds like there's a bunch of them.
Right, there's a whole bunch of them. There's steampunk, biopunk, diesel punk, eco punk is a new thing from like 2 years ago. But yeah, I know, right? In fact, when I announced this episode's theme and I was brainstorming it, my brother said, "Did you talk about eco punk?" And I was like, I don't know anything about it. It's too new. Anyway, the sort of the classification of fiction as being something punk sort of started when William Gibson wrote a science fiction story called Neuromancer, where he created sort of this genre called cyberpunk. And cyberpunk was, let's do a high-tech story, but we'll have it set in a dystopia. And instead of focusing on anyone who's really, really important in the setting, we focus on the lowlifes and the dregs of society and how they're going to exist in a high-tech society and how technology won't necessarily fix all of our problems.
Okay. So it's kind of where the archetypical kind of genre setting is always about how cool and how amazing this setting is. Look at these awesome peaks on the top. You know, like, oh, Starship Enterprise, it's the flagship of the fleet kind of thing.
Exactly.
Or this is like, you know, all the I don't know, like Deep Space Nine, you know, the dregs kind of off in the fringes there. Lando,
kind of.
have you read or seen any kind of punk type of things, or that would come to mind?
Yeah, I Treasure Planet.
Oh God, yeah.
That was the
Space
Disney movie.
That theme song's been stuck in my head
It's
for
kind of almost cyberpunky, I think.
Exploration punk?
Well, it definitely that leans a little more towards sort of steampunk style counterculture.
Oh, okay.
There's kind of two general categories that a punk falls into, and that's sort of like steampunk or like cyberpunk, because steampunk was the second kind of punk classified when William Gibson and his friend Bruce Sterling wrote a sort of dystopia Victorian story called the Difference Engine or something like that, and they called it steampunk. So like, oh, it's like our cyberpunk genre, except for it's the Victorian era and everything's all steam powered. A lot of things have been done with the kind of setting more than the counterculture aspect. So steampunk is more on the steam and less on the punk or the rebellion, where cyberpunk is more on the punk and less on the cyber.
All right, so the punk genres then are, it's the primary setting element that makes it like steam,
Right.
and then the
Steam,
punk
cyber,
is
diesel.
being focused on the dregs of society or lower rung people, and it's
Sometimes kind of a
with just
counterculture.
ratio.
I mean, like
Oh,
punk media from the '80s. I think punk music
yeah.
was a little bit of counterculture.
Yeah,
So-
it's a rejection of sort of societal norms.
So displaying a setting by showing those who rebel against it instead of showing people who are part of society.
Firefly.
Exploration punk, cowboy. Nah,
I was
that's
just thinking Cowboy Bebop.
Oh,
yeah,
Cowboy Bebop is super cyberpunk.
Awesome. Then I'm on board.
Oh yeah,
Except-
yeah.
more punk, less cyber, because they don't really make a big deal out of the weird technology.
They
No,
do just
no.
kind of take it in stride, but their technology in Cowboy Bebop is pretty impressive.
Yeah, so it fits it on a setting note, but I don't know. It doesn't.
Well, I don't think
feel like
that-
that's a punk story because it's not about a rebellion. It's just about a bunch of
Well,
kind of low-class people.
what's it called? Blade Runner, one of the most famous cyberpunk stories made into a movie. That wasn't about a rebellion. That was about just like a cop trying to catch a couple of fugitives. It's not necessarily rebellion, but it is kind of like focusing on the less glorious aspects of your setting. Like Cowboy Bebop, they're bounty hunter. They're a former assassin, a washed-up cop, amnesiac, and a child.
So I don't know if that's really something that's just universal across punk. Because if you look at what I'm guessing here is kind of the first two, the cyberpunk and the steampunk. It seems that cyberpunk, because I've seen Blade Runner. I haven't read the book it's based on. Do Android's Dream of Electric Sheep, but it seems like those two kind of, and other things in their genre, come with kind of a narrative with them. Like Blade Runner is kind of about how like society with all this new technology hasn't really helped anybody, but it's further divided everybody into the kind of normal caste systems we see today. But steampunk isn't really about that anyway. I mean, it's kind of got that Victorian setting, so it's already got a kick-ass
Right.
caste system, but it's more
Steampunk's a little more
about
romantic.
yeah. It seems like steampunk. It doesn't have that same kind of narrative. It's more just about like normal kind of Victorian stories, but with technology magic that seems period appropriate.
So is it even worth lumping that into the same category as cyberpunk?
It is complicated because a lot of the classification of steampunk, like I said, comes from the fact that the guy who wrote cyberpunk then kind of made another genre, and he's like, oh, it's like this, but it's in Victorian. And from what I've read about it, the difference engine is kind of counterculture-y, but the aesthetic has been called steampunk more than the actual thing. However, I've noticed a couple of steampunk works, like, are you familiar with Dr. Gordbort?
No.
No.
Our buddy... we call him Jay, was really into Gordbort. It's kind of a Victorian ray gun manufacturer, and the whole thing is this very steampunk aesthetic, but they go with all the problems of the Victorian era, like classism, racism, and backwards thinking. Like, they have a whole device that's designed to spite the moon because the moon must be conquered. Or like they have adventures of this heroic conquester of planets, and they just talk about all the Martians he's subjugating and stuff.
So could we?
So is that Brannigan?
Yeah, exactly. Futurama is a total cyberpunk.
I think it's just omnipunk. It just consumes all punks. But so from what I'm hearing here, it sounds more like the punk thing. Well, not more like, but that it also heavily incorporates sort of an aesthetic feel. Like just like kind of the Tolkien fantasy world that's kind of just become the generic Western fantasy world. When you say, oh yeah, no, my thing's a fantasy world, it conjures to mind, tall, lithe elves that live forever and don't share their secrets that would really help out the humans.
Right, and the dwarfs who are in their kingdoms mining gold. Yeah,
so it's just conjures this entire image where, like, when you say cyberpunk, I mean, I'm not super into the genre. When you say cyberpunk, I imagine like people with electric robot limbs and like, neon running lights and like
intelligent computers.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got the kind of usually a very heavy kind of Eastern influence in a Western city kind of thing. That stems a lot more from the 80s and Japan becoming a big economic power, but a lot of cyberpunk will have
plus then also the 90s
Chinese aesthetics.
Oh.
But yeah, no, a lot of cyberpunk has Japanese or Chinese aesthetics, like Ghost in the Shell kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, that's Japanese media, so I can't really.
Well, yeah, but if you watched Blade Runner, like every other sign was in Japanese in like Los Angeles. Because in the 80s, we thought Japan would take over the world.
It's true. Give him time. Give him time.
It was a simpler time.
Yeah.
All right. So what about other punk genres?
Well,
Yeah,
Ray Gun
I've heard
Gothic is pretty popular. Oh, sorry, I cut you off.
I've heard about hero punk that's been used to describe a lot of the kind of campy superhero stories, but I'm not sure exactly what separates that from like any other superhero setting.
Well, I'm not as familiar with.
What would make something hero punk as opposed to just a superhero story?
Well, I think I have some insight there. I was talking with our friend, the Atomic Samurai, about that type of thing. He loves comic books, all that kind of thing. And I think a big difference would be that if the atmosphere of superheroism like permeates and defines the world, then it's kind of like a hero punk, like the Incredibles. The Incredibles was hero punk. There's heroes everywhere, and heroes are doing their thing until, of course, they were outlawed and stuff.
Well, that's what made it punk.
Yeah, and the really
I
big
understand it right.
Justice, like the big Justice League things where they have everybody running around. One Punch Man, actually.
Oh yeah,
would
One
be
Punch Man, totally.
Kind of that, like the entire world, essentially, like as far as I can tell, completely relies like on heroes in the
All right.
entirety. Whereas
So-
opposed to like some superhero movie where it's like just the one superhero and you kind of have the archetypical like lone hero story, wouldn't be hero punk, I think.
So more like the Tick.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right, yeah. Especially since they're all crummy heroes.
Well,
I
yeah,
think
yeah. I
that's
was
the
just thinking
punk
about
part.
that. That fits the punk mold.
What designates it as punk is kind of a sort of cynicism towards the genre, I think. Like when we do a hero punk story, it's kind of like, all right, well, if superheroes were a thing, there'd be a lot of them, and they'd have to do some kind of regulating bureaucracy bullshit, like One Punch Man, like where the guy's a really good hero, but because of the bureaucracy, he can't get recognized because he's shitty at doing SATs.
Well, not to mention a bunch of them don't help out because they just don't want to. And like let cities get destroyed because they have plans that day.
Or they don't want to ruin their record.
Yeah.
Kind of like lawyers like do in real life.
Oh my God, lawyer punk.
So basically they
That's
turn
Phoenix
heroes
Wright.
they turn heroes into regular people.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's a kind of a cynicism. So you see the dregs of society in a superhero-driven world.
You make the great things mundane.
All
Oh,
right.
yeah, totally. That's,
Which I guess comes
drama.
in an arcane punk too. Like they just at some point magic is just technology and it's just flavor text. that
Oh
makes
yeah,
it
I
different.
mean,
What do
I
you mean
think
by arcane punk? Can you go into detail about that a little bit more?
like when you have modern level technology, but it's all explained with like wizards and crystals and shit. You have a magic train, airships, what have you, and magic isn't really magical. It's something you go to a 4-year technical
So-
school to study, and then
what was
you
that
make-
D&D setting with that?
like
was-
any of them that are big and fancy. I
Eberron.
think.
Eberron, that was the one.
Yeah, they had all the magic
Eberron's the one
stuff.
where there's been like a world war and
also
like
the old
airships are a
Starkiller
thing.
games.
So where did
And Starkiller.
Starkiller is great, but would Avatar: The Last Airbender, the original series, like kind of fit in that? Because they do kind of have that just magical stuff that permeates their world, especially like the big city of Ba Sing Se, I think
Is
it
that
is.
a punk setting though?
I wouldn't say that
he's
The
the
Last
frickin'
Airbender
Avatar.
is punk, but Legend of Korra is punk.
That's a bit of steampunk going on, that's for sure.
Yeah, Legend of Korra is very steampunk because Legend of Korra takes this kind of whimsical, magical world, and it's like, all right, well now it's advanced, and now like this mystic fire bending that was once a representation of being in balance with your yin and yang, you can now get as a job to just power
Yeah.
generators with your lightning.
That was like the best. I love that part about that,
That-
series. Like there were
that
not,
is-
I did not enjoy a lot about that show. Like the art was good in places, but the fact that one of the main characters like just worked shooting lightning into a stick all day made me happy.
like that is I think the definitive thing on punk is it's kind of like this raw cynicism, and it's like this thing that was once like a secret of the Fire Nation's royal family is now like a thing you do like as a crappy day job.
All right, so
And that's the most cynical part of Avatar.
so you take your fantastic setting and then you show how it wouldn't really change anything from reality, and then you have a something punk.
Pretty much. I think there's another type of punk called ray gun gothic, which is kind of breaks the naming convention, but whatever. And that is the world of atomic power from the 40s to 60s turned into an aesthetic, like Fallout.
Oh yeah,
Fallout is hella ray gun gothic, and that's for the aesthetic there. You kind of take the technology and you keep going with kind of 40s to 60s technology, and especially the cultural baggage that it carries with it.
yeah. The 50s was a pretty fucked up time.
Yes, it was.
Well, I mean, can we really talk now?
Yes.
It's always a
Alright.
fucked up time. I think that's the point of punk is that no matter what your technology, the world's still kind of shitty.
Oh my God, the whole time
People are
I was the
people.
punk.
Yeah. All right. And from what I've studied of solar punk, and I want to say I don't know solar punk. It's like been a thing as of like 2014.
Yeah.
Seems like the
Is
opposite.
that it's kind of like a sort of when I heard like solar punk, someone said, "Oh, like Zootopia solar punk," because they've got this kind of weird neo utopia thing, and I was like, "Oh, that doesn't sound very counterculture." And when I brought that up to my brother, I call him J Man, he says to me, "I don't know, they still have a rigid like caste system and racism," and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, it's punk."
Actually, they have full on speciesism.
Yeah,
Yeah, there you go.
naming.
Well, yeah, but it doesn't seem like that really touches on the eco part. It seems like that's just an aesthetic, not a really
From what
important part of the story.
Yeah, from what I've noticed, solar punk's just kind of an aesthetic more than anything else, even more than steampunk.
Well, that's not bad. I mean,
Well, it just
Landon's
doesn't
an
really fit.
artist, and like with art and like different styles, you still want to have like words to define your genres and stuff.
That's true. I mean, it's if you ever look in architecture, geez, like they have a word for like the roof shaped like that way, and it's like some fancy French thing. I read up on architecture recently. Sorry, it's on my mind.
I forgive you.
That's good.
Anyways, I think the tricky thing is like at this point, how do you make a new like genre? Like, how do you make a new punk?
Well, you have to pick a fantastic element first, and
All right.
then you have to imagine a setting with that fantastic element, and then you have to ruin it.
So, yeah,
I think we had a simple flowchart here, guys. Should plot that out.
So how is life still shitty when? So yeah, let's pick ourselves
wait,
a
wait.
fantastic element. out.
Would Deep Space Nine actually be punk then? Because like they took the whole fantastic look, we could just make infinite energy and food thing and made it shitty.
Yeah,
I
a bit.
think it is actually.
Like, they
And-
still have money because you need it when you're not on Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've checked. I'm checking the list of like kind of the loosely established punk stuff, and Deep Space like space punk isn't a thing. I guess you could loosely call Deep Space Nine like cyberpunk, but it's not really like cyberpunk is supposed to be like the near future kind of technology stuffs, and Deep Space Nine is kind of not the near future.
No. Not at
It
all.
still captures the feeling though. So
Kinda.
It's Cisco punk now. Deal with it. Sunglasses.
I'm not Picard.
hand me my phaser. It's the one that says "bad motherfucker" on it.
That's my bad motherfucker. Oh, Cisco's my favorite captain.
So the lowest
Yeah.
setting is vaporized. Jesus.
You don't even want to see what 11 does.
All right. So, what's our fantastic element? Let's
Well,
pick what
let's-
we're gonna ruin here.
let's make a short list. What are fantastic elements that haven't been sucked up by
Well,
some
I'll
punk?
go through all the things that have been done so far so we can kind of see what we can stay away from. Apparently, classified as of TV tropes, stone punk, i.e. the Flintstones and Gilligan's Island, is an aesthetic.
All right. Yeah.
It's more of a comedic thing.
I can accept that, like from the artistic, like visual perspective.
Well, the the Flintstones definitely didn't like take the technology seriously, but it was very much our technology of the Stone Age ramped up to 11 till it's like modern technology, and then it's just like a domestic thing with weird sight gags. So
Yeah.
it is kind of a punk. I mean, maybe not Gilligan's Island, but like,
Coconut punk, yeah.
all right. Sandal punk is technology based on legendary inventors of the ancient world, like Archimedes, which I think Sandal punk can be like Jade Empire.
I don't know. I saw a movie where like the MacGuffin was Archimedes' death ray, although I don't really see it as being punkish.
Yeah, considering it's a real death ray, that you should not make it home, kids.
Yeah. Another myth busted. No, I think Jade Empire is the only thing I can think of that's like that, because that was like the sort of like
Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, totally.
They have all those weird inventions that like Da Vinci has in the second.
Oh yeah, Da Vinci is actually explicitly called up, especially in clock punk, which is mechanical clockwork and gunpowder. So it's kind of I actually prefer it to steampunk because I like the aesthetic of clockwork gears better than.
Actually, now that I think about it, there hasn't been like a good Three Musketeers-ish like rapier movie in like forever.
Gunpowder punk.
Ooh.
So like not clock punk, like no clockworks, but just everything's
It's a
everything's
wet dream.
powered by explosions.
Yeah.
I like it.
Well, diesel? No, not diesel.
I mean, technically, it's powered by a series of explosions.
want to get technical. Well, steampunk is kind of defined by like non-combustion engine technologies. So I guess anyway, there's steampunk, which is sort of non-combustion era, sort of extrapolations of H.G. Wells and Jules Verne technology. There's diesel punk, which is not common, but I love it, and that's the kind of like sci-fi reimagining of World War II
Hey, we got a comment here, a question. What would Mad Max fall under? Is that a type of
Mad Max is a little bit ray gun gothic and a little bit desert punk, which post-apocalypse movies have kind of been their own thing.
Isn't it diesel punk?
No, diesel punk is 1920s to 1940s kind of World War II, World War I aesthetic.
So, like, what was
Mad
that?
Max
What was that
is-
terrible movie with Angelina Jolie? Sky Captain.
Captain
World
the World Tomorrow is diesel punk.
Oh, my God.
Okay.
As is
I was about to say you need to narrow it down.
yeah, ironically, Steam Boy is a diesel punk.
Yeah, because he's rebelling against the diesel with steam.
And Starkiller is kind of diesel punk aesthetics in a magipunk
Well,
setting.
if I recall it, like the aesthetic kind of shifted to mirror like actual technology changing, but I don't know that there wasn't really any art with that really.
That's true, but like the general aesthetic of the characters was like Starkiller himself wore like a bomber jacket because they were in planes that were cold,
Yeah, I mean,
and we took a lot of they took a lot of things like old like bomber sights and like linked rifles and stuff that like early planes would have used.
All right. How about this? Check the list, Dionin.
Uh-huh.
Is there a psychic punk?
Oh shit! Checking. There's a biopunk, but
I can think of a story that vaguely qualifies, or at least it would if it weren't like really pro the made-up culture that it takes place in. So I think we're in the clear.
closest I can find is biopunk, and that's like Existenz. Have you ever seen that movie?
No.
Oh, Existenz is like if the Matrix is powered with organic computers.
well, I mean, it was.
Was
Well,
being
no.
powered by
Like you plug a dick-shaped tentacle into the back of your head.
neat.
Yeah, it was the sequel to Videodrome, which was fucking rad. That's the closest I can think of, but no, there's no like psychic. Wait, there's one novel that fits that.
Wait, there is another.
Are you thinking of the Darkover series?
No.
Okay, good, because that's not punkish.
I was gonna say there's a book I read, and I'm like one of like 10 people today who still read it, called The Demolished Man, and that's a story about a guy who kills. He was a CEO, and he kills another CEO in a world where cops are telepaths, and also high-ranking people in society are telepaths, and so he has to find a way to hide that he killed the guy and go into cover in a world where cops are psychic.
All right,
So- Yeah, go on. So,
what if we say we want to make a psychic punk story and just say that most people in this setting are psychic? How do we ruin it?
Well, for one thing, there are like being alone would definitely be a luxury. Like finding ways to isolate yourself. So only people who are wealthy enough to afford some kind of insulating material in their living
Magneto
space
helmet.
can
Or
or a
range.
Magneto helmet can be alone, whereas poor people have to
Suddenly-
constantly be at the whims of like police who can just walk by and everyone knows what you're thinking.
So
So-
poor people live in cities, rich people live in rural areas.
I don't
Well, that's
think
just
that's
real
ever really
life.
been done a lot in punk stuff. Punk stuff actually usually avoids rural.
But
Huh.
rich people live in rural areas.
Yeah, I know. That's
The
such a
setting is tenement housing, only everything's like really shiny and sleek looking. It's just shitty because everyone is reading your thoughts all the time. And
rich
those
people
few people,
telecommute.
yeah, and those few people who can either afford shielding or are generally good natured are really judgmental of all the horrible things they can see you thinking.
Oh my god.
so Lando and D-Man do like obviously part of the punk thing was like a strong visual aesthetic. What kind of visual things would like match the psychic thing? Like for me, I'm thinking of like the purple glowy crystals, but I'm a walking cliche monster. So, like, do you guys have any other ideas? So there's something to throw in there, really, because the visual aesthetic to me is like one of the biggest things, especially for steampunk. I love steampunk mostly because I love brass and it being machined readily. But
Yeah.
you guys got any ideas for like just like what screams psychic really?
Well, when I think psychic, I can't help but think Oh boy, and I'm losing the name of this machine. From the X-Men, Professor X inside of
Cerebro.
Cerebro.
Cerebro,
Damn
thank
it.
you.
Everyone says Cerebro
Yeah.
collectively.
So yeah, I tend to think, as weird as this sounds, I tend to think of the machinery attached to the sort
I
of
think in a
Oh,
world
you mean like from the
where
90s
everyone's a
X-Men?
psychic,
yeah,
it wouldn't be so much a machine that gives the psychic powers,
Yeah.
probably.
Well, cops
So
could
much
have
as
those devices
machines
to help
that blocks.
Amplifiers.
Yeah, so like
So I kind of tend to think more along the lines of like Jedi Force powers. You don't want to sell me death sticks. You know?
psychic cops.
I know one of the things I think of is a lot of D&D psionic kind of aesthetic, which shaped a lot of role-playing game psionics, comes from a kind of combination of turn-of-the-century 1900s mysticism and kind of appropriated Eastern mysticism, like mandalas and chakra points and stuff.
Yeah.
That's where a lot of our crystal stuff comes from, honestly, is sort of trying to emulate that weird sort of West discovers East look. So you'd probably see people walking around with like bindies in the middle of their head, or like
Oh yeah, like they've installed gems in their body to like enhance their psychic things or block them.
oh yeah, or enhance or block. I mean, you could definitely probably find like criminals might have like you ever seen like weird fantasy art guys wear like those headbands with a single metal
What was
plate in the
that,
center of their head?
the last Metal Gear game that came out? There was a Phantom Pain, was it?
Yes.
Where Snake had that big fucking piece of metal in his head, like his
Yep,
his
the
horn?
shrapnel. The
Yeah,
horn.
so I'm thinking like some kind of dark obsidian thing like that.
That
Like, I don't know.
Guardians of the
actually might be
Galaxy, the guy
interesting.
with the arrows.
Oh yeah, with the big the red crystal
Gotta figure this
mohawk.
out. Yeah.
We can get like definitely some aspects of like biomodification and like because the people who are wealthy might be able to have like the Cerebro machines, but people who are like lower might have to do things like do weird invasive implants and like kind of winging it with regards to, is this going to make me a better psychic, or
So
is this going to
What's like
protect
the
me?
best part of being a psychic here? Like in this world, in our, I guess, psychic punk world, would someone who's like really powerful psychically just actually be capable of ascending to a higher plane and leaving their body behind? And like,
Well, sure, but that's just called living in the cloud. All of their technology has psychic interfaces. You can just leave the meat suit behind.
That's actually an interesting idea. It's almost like a psychic version of like the Matrix in Cyberpunk.
So if you're really powerful, well, for one thing, you can interface with technology better, so you can just get better jobs.
yeah, because all the technology is partially psychic based, I'd assume.
Yeah. And then if you're a really weak psychic, not only can you not use a lot of the more advanced technology, you have to go for the more invasive procedures to amplify your power, and it's easier to read your mind.
I mean, if you think about it, if you have less of a psychic sense, it's almost like not having both of your eyes. Like you're almost
Yeah.
like a cripple in society.
Or we could flip it and say that people with no psionic potential are harder to read, so that they actually end up rising to the top of society because they can still lie.
Or would they be viewed with more suspicion by the law enforcement officials
So
because
they'd be like a
they're shiftier?
persecuted
So they would.
demographic.
I think that would like push them towards the element of like a criminal kingpin.
Oh yeah.
So, all right, main
Yeah, there's
character
the-
discovers he has no psychic potential, and his father is actually the leader of a crime syndicate.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
definitely he wouldn't be able to use a lot of technology, so he's almost reliant on his friends and co-workers or collaborators, I guess, because
Yeah,
You know,
we
counterculture.
could like if we were to make a story in this, which I think we should talk about at least shortly in the end. But if we could incorporate some themes that exist for like real people who have senses that are not as attenuated as is norm. Like say we have 5 people here. Who here is colorblind, right? Anybody? Nobody. Yeah. So we're a little bit of an outlier there, like because people do have senses that not everybody else has sometimes.
I have almost no sense of smell.
How about who here wears glasses? Or who here doesn't wear glasses? Anyone?
I don't.
I don't.
Jam
Right here.
All right. I'm not sure where we can go with that, actually. I'm not sure how to measure that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't really consider myself like handicapped or just like behind people. But imagine
Alright,
if you
how
were
about-
in a world with psychics and there was just this whole other extra meta world you just could not perceive.
Well, what if it was like you have to remember to keep your glasses around? If you don't have psychic potential, then you need one of those amps. And if your insurance doesn't cover it, you'll end up having to use an old one that maybe is wearing out.
Oh yeah, like the people who have to wear glasses that are heavily scratched because
Yeah, their
They can't
insurance
afford-
doesn't cover a new one.
Yeah,
that hits a little
Or they
closer.
don't
So-
have it.
It occurs to me, like in this world, you could have a lot of cool stories that are like mirror the Inception or Exception thing, where people sneaking ideas in your mind or pulling them out.
Yeah,
That'd be kind of
Definitely.
cool.
but what if you go further with it? Say that people just think that's normal. Like the idea of someone inserting an idea into your head isn't considered any different than persuasion.
Yeah, no, you could like
That's just
invite people
marketing.
into your dreams and shit.
Yes.
Yeah, and then just like our deviant culture is the group who still wants privacy.
Oh yeah. I mean, and we've already established that the people who are powerful and are wealthy enough to go live in rural countryside and telecommute are, seeking
Assholes.
privacy.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it sounds like I've actually made a setting here that has a lot of story potential, like just all kinds of different
totally.
things.
and we could even do different social dynamics by just saying different countries handled the psychic awakening differently. In one culture, having no psionic potential is a really bad thing, and it means you're bottom rung of society, suspected as criminal. In another, you end up rising to the top because it's seen as useful that you can handle classified information.
One culture might entirely make psychic subservient people just around to work the psychic devices like grayware computers. Or
Yeah, didn't the Kunari from the Dragon Age Origins kind of have some weird
yes, they did.
stuff about their mages?
Only in this setting, that non-psychic population would be like 5% of the people aren't psychic and just managed to hit control of most of their slave population now. So it would probably be North Korea equivalent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also just thought of the fact that if you're doing some criminal activity, you'd wear like those Naruto headbands.
Yeah, or something.
A whole bunch of
People-
ninjas.
How do we make this just a bit more weeby?
Yeah.
So
well,
the stop and frisk equivalent is, all right, stop, take off your head guard. Let's have a look.
Take off your head guard and any
random passersby to see. God.
take off your headband and any amethyst, citrine, or carnelian jewelry you might
All
be
right,
wearing.
all right. Opening scene is some guy getting stopped by a cop who asks that. He says, "Dude, I want to keep it secret. Like I just came back from a date. So can we just step into this or step into the station or step into this alleyway so
Here's
no
the
one
big
else is
turning
close
point
enough?"
for the story. We step in and like, does something happen? Does he kill the cop? Like, what kind of story we got here?
Yeah, that's what I was going for.
Ah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, yeah, he beats the cop up, and then that's how we find out the main character is a criminal. That's
All right, that's pretty sweet. I like that.
yeah. Before you stopped me, what I was about to say.
You're welcome.
Ruin the
Tripped
pitch.
you up. Damn it. That's my job, ladies and gentlemen. I ruin everything.
Well,
Okay.
definitely. There'd also be like you said, might be varying degrees of stuff. Like just for being able to just not have your thoughts being widely broadcasted, just maybe wearing jewelry that softens it or doesn't make it broadcast as much.
filters.
Yeah,
Or
filters.
sends false thoughts.
Like you can't see violent thoughts when you're wearing. People can't see your violent thoughts when you wear this.
When you wear amethyst.
Or do
like
that,
a
D-Man.
training signal sends a bunch of false thoughts.
Yeah.
Kind of the way like DC Comics always treats dealing with the psychic. Like you just think of random things.
What was Dan and Mab's Furry Adventures? They said a lot of people think they can deal with psychics by thinking of things really explicit. We've already seen that. What you need to do is memorize 3 pages of legal text and just recite that in your head. And actually, in the Demolished Man talked about little mnemonics, little kind of jingles that get stuck in your head are used as psychic static. People call them Pepsis, and no one knows why they're called Pepsis in the future.
Do-do-do-do-do.
I liked that. I liked that little aspect. I actually discovered this story when I was
That is
trying to think
nice.
of like ways to do psychic static in a story. and it was just the guy taught the main character this obnoxious jingle that I've only ever seen it written in words, and it's still stuck in my head, and I fucking hate it. They also did actually a really cool thing in the book where they would write what a party is like with a bunch of psychic socialites, where they would, it's hard to explain in words, they would write sections of dialogue abstractly across the page as people's thoughts drifted into each other. Like, you'd write one conversation going one way, and then that connects to another conversation going down the page, and then that connects to a related conversation going across the page diagonally, and it's all weird.
That
and
sounds terrible.
it was definitely an original way to write a story.
I don't want to go to that party. Shit.
All right, how about this? So, main character criminal discovers a conspiracy. You see, in this country, representatives or the governing body is selected every year when everyone goes into a voting booth, deactivates all their mental defenses, and becomes a hive mind. And there's a conspiracy to shut people out based on who they would reject and what ideas they wouldn't approve of.
Wait, so they have a communal hive mind that they form once a year to like make big decisions.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
And it
That's
turns
kind of
out the
cool.
existing ruling body is excluding people from that forcibly and secretly.
Yeah, that's all right. Write that down.
And I'm trying to
Well, I have it on recording, so.
Yeah.
and I'm going to send you guys a picture of what
You need to say the motto there for sounding board.
I don't remember what it was.
is that we're no longer sounding board.
No, it's shit gold.
I shit gold.
Just
All right.
come up with this stuff, no problem.
So I've linked a link that's what a psychic party conversation looks like in that story that I was talking about.
I'll open it and see if it's appropriate for our audience. here,
Safe
and I'll
for
share
work.
that.
Oh, it's fine.
You say so.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
and Kara.
boy.
Gibberish.
Oh god.
Yeah, no, you can follow it once you get used to the story. It's kind of neat, but when you first look at it, you're just like, oh fuck, what am I looking at?
Yeah, that's a bit
Nope.
weird.
So if you look diagonally up to upper left to bottom right, it's frankly elderly. I don't think you'll be working for Monarch very shortly. And then connecting to that is someone asking repeatedly as they're offering food to people. You can just kind of follow where people are in the conversation based on how their words blend
Now,
together.
that is a cool idea because like I said earlier, kind of the artistic aesthetic would be important. Like if this was a comic and like the panels just started kind of merging into each other, like and the night became one big thing, that would be kind of. I mean, I'd like to see an artist that could pull that off.
Oh yeah, it's a visual style that's not really an aesthetic as much as it's a way of telling the story. It's a non-immediately visual aesthetic. It's kind of a weird meta aesthetic. Like most good psychic stuff, it's just kind of weird and.
So, what other stories would echo our like the hive mind exclusion thing? And what did they do? What do we want to steal? What do we not want to do?
Well, one thing we could definitely steal is in The Demolished Man, instead of executing criminals, they erase every aspect of your personality and make you a blank slate with psychic attacks.
Yeah.
The name
All right, yeah.
the process of what they do to criminals. They just erase their identity.
Well, it just sounds like
Okay.
normal rehabilitation.
All right. So how about this? The main character is getting guidance from someone they only hear distantly, like psychically. And it turns out it's someone who was eradicated but managed to persist on by imposing a bit of their personality on their executioners.
Are they like so they're part of the zeitgeist?
Yeah. And they only can emerge when several of the people who killed them are together.
Oh my god, that's kind of awesome.
That's pretty sweet.
That's
Yeah.
Hey,
Oh,
shit
man.
gold.
He's doing it.
that's actually really neat.
Which also gives you a chance to exclude information from the main character, or without stupid plot devices like the person who's giving them information getting executed every goddamn time.
I've never
seen
This
that.
time it's like the guy, it's like, I don't know. The part of me that knows that isn't here. Or hang on, they're about to get out of the car. I can't talk to you much longer.
God, that can be done well, and I cannot imagine currently how to do that really well. Like, awesome, that's so cool.
It's a cool concept. And another thing we can rob liberally from is Scanners, if anyone saw Scanners.
No, give us a quick rundown. What was that?
Scanners is basically about a baby boom of psychic children that are born as the result of a drug that has become popular. I might be mixing it up with another story, but if I recall, it's kind of like if someone's mother took the drug while she was pregnant, then her child will be born with weird psychic powers. And among the things they can do is they can scan your brain so intensely your head explodes.
Yeah.
That's where the head explosion gift comes
Not
from.
that part, but what was it? The drugs making psychic kids. I think they
That was
stole
also
that for
in-
Minority Report.
Minority Report, yes.
Yeah.
Which I think was another Philip K. Dick novel. I think maybe. I'm going to double check that before I make an ass of myself.
Yeah. So something this kind of reminds me of is a little bit of Ghost in the Shell. Obviously, Cyberpunk.
It is Philip K. Dick.
Love the old show and all that stuff.
Mhm.
But what was it called? There was either the Laughing Man or there was the Puppet Master or something else. One thing was just kind of like a distribute. I think it was the Laughing Man.
Yeah, I think the thing that censors his face when he's on
Yeah.
videos.
Some kind of like distributed thing. But that would be really cool because then like that consciousness of like whatever that voice is, it just doesn't exist unless the guys are all together. And it can only like when they're together, I guess, urge them together and then like make them leave hints to gather more people together or something.
Yeah. Oh, it also gives a good reason for the hero not to like try to pick off their enemies, because every time they kill someone who's part of this conspiracy, their guide loses a bit of itself.
Ooh, it's a good way to keep the bad guy alive and the good guy alive.
Yeah.
It's another
Yeah.
technology we can exploit. Oh, you continue. Sorry.
Oh, don't worry about it. Go on.
Another technology we can exploit is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy had this thing called the Someone Else's Problem Field Generator, and that was it was a cloaking device that made things invisible by inducing in you the mental phenomenon of categorizing something as someone else's problem and making you just kind of walk away. If the main character is insulated against psychic stuff because of his status as a null, he can see through a someone else's problem field cloaking device.
All right, then how can the voice talk to him? Oh, you know what? Never mind. The voice possesses someone who's near him and gives info dumps.
Wait, the
Kinda
voice
like-
actually talks with words? Weird.
Yeah, it possesses, like, he'll just be, ordering a crepe, and then the cashier will just start saying, your target will be carrying a black briefcase, in Times Square at 4:30 p.m.
That kind of reminds me of Joan of Arcadia for some reason.
Yeah, no, imagine
Oh,
if
wow, I
so
thought
imagine if like we had a budget to actually make a movie or show this and we just did not tell anybody what was happening and they just had to speculate for so long. It's like, is this guy in a dream? Like that guy just walked up to him and yelled, "You need to wake up." And like all this other weird stuff. That would be such a mind fuck.
Yeah, but again, hopefully no one says, this is like Joan of Arcadia. Is this like a
Well-
religious show?
No, we would want people to know it's psychic punk, because that's a big part of the
That's
setting.
the coolest
True,
thing.
yeah.
Although they might not get through they could get through the first few scenes without realizing everyone is psychic. Maybe have some indicator when someone's like, oh, hey, do we want to use just telekinesis, or do we want telepathy or telekinesis?
Telekinesis is pretty cool if you can get a chance to do it.
I mean, maybe it should
Upsides
be
and
tiers.
downsides.
Would Miss Cleo be a god?
No.
No, she's a null.
Miss Cleo works the exact same job Miss Cleo worked before. That's the punk aesthetic. She's still giving advice to random assholes.
Well, no, she's still pretending she can see the future. She's just
Yeah,
a
no-
telepath who's pretending she can see the future.
She does a cold reading on you and figures out what would make you really happy to
I guess
say.
it's a hot reading now.
Yeah, I guess. But I think that telekinesis is neat. But the thing is sometimes it does kind of dominate the visual aesthetic. Then again, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
And that's
What
kind of the part of the punk, wasn't it? Is that this is all in. It's all like we're all in here on the psychic part of it, right?
How about not everyone is telekinetic? Like telekinesis is a sign of being particularly gifted as a psychic.
No,
So,
no,
like,
no. telekinesis devices are expensive. You have to be a powerful telepath and rich.
Yeah, all right. So telekinesis is technology driven. So like cops have like telekinesis like bracers to grab and restrain people. That's actually kind of cool.
Yeah, all right. And it's just a psychic controlled device, but a
Yeah.
really expensive one.
That's neat. And might even throw in a kind of taking from Star Wars a little bit here. But if you start using your telekinetic bracer and start flinging stuff around, it kind of muffles your ability to hear things telepathically.
Or
So that's-
maybe it actually generates psychic noise.
Yeah.
So like everyone around you starts flinching back.
And that's where all the visual phenomenons of like telekinesis blasts come from. That's your mind visualizing that massive amount of psychic interference is just this big purple glowing ball that shoots forward. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's your brain, like that's your brain staring at a light too
Yeah,
long and
you're-
going, ah.
Perceiving it with your visual cortex, not your eyes.
Yeah, and so if you like see like a video footage of like someone telekinetically assaulting 3 people, it's
Yeah.
it's just a dude grabbing
It's just
stuff.
2 guys posing at each other. What the fuck?
God damn it! Now we're back to JoJo.
All right. But we still have psychically receptive devices that don't involve telekinesis. Like
Oh yes.
instead of an automatic door, there is a door you trigger with your psychic power.
Well, I actually wrote a psychic sci-fi novella when I was in high school. It was my senior project. Everyone just act surprised. But
My
one of the
God.
technologies I had was psychics were kind of rare in my setting, but one of the technologies was called a wetware gray chip, which is a computer chip that has cultured brain cells on it. And someone who is a telepath would be able to access those computers and manipulate them using their telepathy. And so every like major military unit had a telepath who would activate their like main computer and like do tactical readings for everyone, because the grayware, the wetware gray chips were just incredibly powerful computers. It just, you can only access them with your psychic.
Okay, so the null is functionally disabled because they can't use computers like that. They can't open automatic doors. They have to use the handicap access.
Yeah.
But their mind can't be read. And oh, hey, could you interface with someone else's telekinesis device if you were a powerful enough psychic?
I
Shut it off.
did. One of the things I did in my story was telepaths are really, really rare psychics, and if you were a telepath and someone else had a different kind of psychic power, you could interface with them and use their psychic power through them.
All right. Well, in this, everyone's telepathic, though. So, I mean, you have the cop tries to disable you with his telekinesis bracer, right?
Yeah.
But you're a stronger psychic than him. Can you just seize control of it?
If you're
Grab a gun.
close enough to it, I mean, that's kind of like wrestling with a gun, I guess.
All right. So, do we want there to be like effective measures for restricting who can use a psychic device, or do we want to say that a criminal can get around them?
Well, I mean,
It's-
even if they're quote unquote effective measures, the criminal's going to get around them.
Oh yeah.
True, and like I think it would serve the narrative that we're kind of making up here better if there were countermeasures and struggles.
I'd say that the closer you are to a device, the more power you're exerting over it. Which is one of the things I did in my story was a telepath can like at range probe your mind, but if they put their hand on your face, they have a better connection and they're able to more invasively dig into your brain. So I'd say that if a cop is wearing the bracer and he's using his telekinesis, if you were like incredibly powerful, you might be able to wirelessly overpower it. But if you grabbed his hand and had a stronger force of will than him, you might be able to wrestle control of it away from him. So it's kind of like a battle of willpower at that
So
point.
our opening scene here, where he's confronted by the cop, our Noel,
Mhm.
why would the cop ask him to remove stuff if he's a Noel and he can't be read?
So he wears his jewelry so that he doesn't get stopped and frisked. Or
Actually,
singled
I
out.
made that suggestion before I realized our main character would be a null.
All right, well, we can have more than one character.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, I'm thinking, if you wear the jewelry and the normal amount of psychic protection stuff just because you look out of place without it, you're kind of broadcasting to everyone that you're disabled. It's like wearing short sleeves when you're missing an arm.
What if it's the person who fights the cop is actually someone who is possessed or suggested by the zeitgeist?
Yeah, or this is we open with the scene where the zeitgeist gets mind wiped. Like we have him doing his Shadowrun equivalent mission where he's going to do some criminal activity, finds out information. The audience doesn't see what information he gets, but they do see that he gets cornered and executed by a bunch of very powerful psychics. And then we pan over to our null.
All right, yeah. I like it. The story grows.
One other thing. The reason the null can control people from so far away and can Deus Ex Machina, like, open doors for the hero is because he is controlling the power of all the psychics who executed him.
Yeah.
Like, he has the power of 6 powerful telepaths.
Nice.
I was actually thinking of a way that the character got executed can talk to the null if the null was psychically resistant. Is one of the things that the zeitgeist imprints upon might be the null's like cell phone, because if we have cultured brain tissue on computers, you know,
That's true.
Maybe, but that was your idea from your novella. We were going kind of more crystal kind of thing.
Oh,
which,
yeah.
we could just say the crystals do the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, we say there
Quartz
are
is-
computers that can interact with psychics. It doesn't really matter what the flavor text is.
and the computers are very crystal quartzy kind of oriented.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
either
keep it
way,
vague.
he
Don't
could,
pull up Prometheus.
could interact with psychic phones. So there's that. Though personally, I think it's kind of neat if he just randomly takes control of people.
Yeah, no, I like that too. I thought, what if one of the fragments was just, you know, that's
Yeah.
how it follows him.
So the null is just someone who was nearby.
Yeah, the null and also all the people that were responsible are part of the zeitgeist and also the null's phone.
Yeah. We could
Or
do
the
that.
null's equivalent of like a handicap assisting device is that he's got like a little crystal that he can remotely access things that people can just naturally
no.
access.
He has a service dog brain.
Oh my god, that's actually kind of cool.
But I was actually going to suggest the null is somehow associated with the zeitgeist. Like the zeitgeist is a family member, or does an ex-lover seem right for this?
Yes.
Definitely.
The person they would have married if only.
Oh, well, a lot of early cyberpunk and stuff is
Romance
influenced
changes.
by film noir. So yeah, definitely. That's very noir.
Yeah, but does it serve what we're
Does it fit here?
Yeah.
I don't see why not.
Yeah. So, like, actually, on that note, how would, because being able to read people's thoughts, that would kind of change the nature of romance.
Yeah.
Don't you think? That's kind of
I think-
important.
I think it would be a lot faster.
You
Might-
cheated on me. I just thought about her. It's the same thing.
Maybe
Well,
they
it's
were fascinated because he's not someone you can just immediately read.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, in general, like, how would
Oh god, sorry, I just realized that's the love behind Twilight.
nice.
I keep forgetting that he's a telepath. That's
It's a side effect of not giving a shit. But, so yeah, all right. How would we alter romance? Well, we'd have to make an assumption about human nature to say that. I'd say it's definitely possible, depending on how humans are. It would either lead to a lot fewer committed relationships or a lot more, based on whether people would generally accept the flaws in other people. Like, you can't gloss over who this person is. You see it.
Well, so to think a little bit about just like how general relationships, not romantic relationships, where we talked earlier about how that, like at a party, the conversation kind of just becomes merged in the one thing. So perhaps maybe there would be more polyamorous relationships, and monogamous relationships would be more difficult. And
Be a fetish.
Yeah, I think it's weird. Ooh, you just want one? That's so weird. I mean, like we're having mental intercourse with kind of people in an AOE radius all the time.
That kind of focus just on me, makes me feel so naked.
Well, one of the things we were talking about was how like jewelry and devices that people normally wear are just like an acceptable level of background static, kind of almost like clothing is. So, being naked before someone, they're aware of all of your faults, but in the courtship process, you're not necessarily completely exposed to them like you are with the taking off your
So-
necklace and ring.
What if our Noel is actually good at reading people?
Like cold reading?
Well, yeah, I guess
like
just
body
like
language.
he has had to pay attention to people's body language.
Oh, like
for
how a
his
deaf
entire
person
life.
reads lips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, come to think of it, they'd probably see it as exactly like that.
Yeah, actually, yeah, all right.
Like, yeah, okay, he's wrong a lot, but it's impressive he does even this well.
So think about he would be incredibly like he'd be so
Intuitive.
disarming. Yeah, because like people would have all their jewelry on and think they're safe, but he would still kind of get a little bit more intimate knowledge, at least more easily than others.
He would be the person who can tell what you're thinking when you assume no one can tell what you're thinking,
Yeah.
and you can never tell what he's thinking.
Oh man,
Oh man, that's actually really cool. He's
He'd
like
be
a
killer at
super
poker.
detective.
actually, he'd probably be banned from poker.
Yeah, and
Everybody would be banned from poker.
Well,
could
no, he
poker
can't
even
be a-
function.
he can't be a police officer either because oversight.
He also
You
can't
can't
use the
trust him
guns.
to be uncorrupt.
He also
Well,
can't
right,
use
so
his guns. So
What would our guy's job be? Like, what would he actually do?
Con man.
yeah.
What
Con
would his
man,
cover be?
Well, he pretends he's psychic because he can fake it passively.
I'm
and just is
imagining the guy from
well-shielded.
Psych, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. You could also definitely just do basic courier stuff with organized crime because he can go slip completely under the radar. Kind of like in Neuromancer, the main character used to be a computer hacker, but then he gets poisoned by the Russians in a way that makes him unable to to connect to computers. And so, in order to keep that same level of thrill, and because he can't get a legitimate job, he's like a courier for various crime peoples.
All right. So back in the day when this person used to be romantically involved with the Zeitgeist, the person who would become the Zeitgeist, they were trying to go legit.
Yeah.
But they just ran into too many social barriers.
Yeah, the world just doesn't respect them because
Like back then, they were studying history or something. Something that just the psychic ability couldn't matter for it, or so they thought. Wanted to be a professor of history.
Yeah.
Or all right, what else is good? Psychiatry. Think about it. A counselor who would it be easier to trust a counselor who couldn't read your thoughts?
That would, huh?
Well, not if it's the norm, would it?
Maybe not.
It's I can see a news story writing an inspirational little blurb saying like, "Wow, this person, a null psychiatrist,
Well, you have to try and be
thinks with
great.
his heart."
We've established that this person, or that even though everyone is psychic, people do still seek out little bits of privacy where they can get it.
True.
Yeah,
Like they
no,
still
but
get their
still-
shield. They still try to take vacations in isolated areas.
I'm also just kind of saying like it's like if you read a news story about like the guy with no arms who plays video games with his feet, it would definitely be used in a newspaper as like a puff piece at
All
some
right. So
point.
for a quick recap here, we got a few more people jumped in and are joining. Dionan, can you give us kind of a short summary of what we're talking about today here on Sounding Board?
Well, in the beginning, we were discussing the various punk genres, such as steampunk and cyberpunk, and the sort of counterculture they represent. They represent taking one element, ramping it up to 11, and then doing a sort of counterculture story based
Where they
around that.
ruin it.
Where they ruin it. Yeah, that's as surrealism puts it. You take something really cool, make it the focus of the story, and then ruin it.
Yeah, and we're talking about kind of developing our own psychic punk story, right?
Talking about a story where everyone in the setting is psychic, and we're talking about the kind of story that you can tell in a setting that is defined by most people are psychic to some degree.
Yeah, and also how you can make that kind of shitty.
Yeah,
So
but also kind of cool.
another big aspect of humanity that we would kind of need to think about how it would work in our world. What about things like religion? One of the people in chat, I believe, brought up confession booth, like the Catholic confession thing, like.
Mhm.
Like, so we were talking about how you like confide in our guy or something, or psychiatry or something like that.
Right.
And this, of course, would be another way of doing it. But like, so something like that, because like we've seen that narratively in a few stories. But would a confession booth or like other types of religions pop up in this different world?
I can see some religions demanding unity between their followers. Like, you're no longer allowed to have any barrier jewelry on.
Or
Yeah,
or
and-
no jewelry while you're at church, because
It's
you know.
true, because
or like-
we have established that they can form temporary hive minds.
Yeah, hive mind cults.
Ooh.
Yeah, right.
Or you wear like super conductive materials, and it's like the greater good.
Yeah, and maybe eventually imply that there is a way to control a hive mind, even if your force of will isn't sufficient.
Oh, that could be our Mao, like in Code Geass, where Mao kind of shows up and foreshadows that the powers can get out of hand.
Yeah.
All right.
So the hive mind cults, it turns out that the same mechanism is being used by the actual standing government during, hive mind voting day.
Oh wow! I just realized that he'd have to have some kind of special accommodation for voting.
Or he can't.
Yeah. All right. That would definitely make it shittier.
Yeah.
Just take some dirt, rub it on the story. Yeah, work it in.
Well, what was that? Shit.
Maybe, we could show people getting scanned like mentally before they go to vote to make sure they don't have any antisocial tendencies.
Ooh. That's
So
That's
that
interesting.
would be good, because that would lightly kind of foreshadow that like the government isn't just letting everybody vote, like they're pre-testing them for making sure they kind of lean the right way,
Maybe it turns out that
Thumbs up,
antisocial
Joe.
personality disorder makes you really hard to control in a hive mind.
Yeah.
sorry, but the progressively getting like getting shittier, or like all I could think about was someone summarized the story Ender's Game as quickly as they could, and the way they summarized it was they had a sergeant saying like, "We are going to train a super soldier child by spending his entire lifetime kicking him in the balls. He will be kicked in the balls at regular interval until he is the perfect soldier and general."
Yeah.
Like, they had like a little illustration of just like Ender growing up getting kicked in the crotch repeatedly.
Beautiful.
That's fair.
It's
It's a pretty decent summary.
it's a classic tale. I
just
think wasn't that the same story as like 300? Just
Not quite.
kicking him in the balls repeatedly. Once they became 7, they weren't fed anymore. We just kicked them in the balls.
It's also the post-assassin story of Spike Spiegel. Actually, I think he's more punched in the gut because he's hungry.
Yeah, but that's just karma. Like, by then he deserved it.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right. Is that why he's so passive? He's just kind of like, yeah, all right, I can deserve this.
I'd like to imagine so. That, and, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that big of a deal. The shit that happens to him.
Well, he thinks he's already dead, so
Yeah, well, he did die and got revived by a Native American Martian. Let's just move on.
Sorry, I just watched that show with my little brother.
Let's
the
not
first
have
time.
our story get that weird and stupid.
This is
I
stupid.
mean, it was sort of cool, but just, yeah, really,
Yeah, well, let's make our story actually cool.
where are you going with this kind of cool?
Kind of like Morrowind.
Am I the chosen one? Maybe.
Hate that game. Finish the whole thing. I do all this work for this lady, and she's just like, "Great, stick around. We might need you to do something else."
Well, yeah, I mean, it's in service of your lady. It's a
Ugh.
labor of love.
And that's when I killed everybody in Morrowind.
That does explain Skyrim. Turns out the Red Mountain never erupted. The Nerevarine just got really mad.
Yeah, no, he's the Red Mountain. That's his name.
It's
Yeah.
the euphemism they use to talk about at least he come and kill you.
All right.
Headcanon accepted.
Okay.
Anyway,
Okay.
Back to the psychic story. Oh, actually, on the subject of Morrowind,
Oh my God.
no. This is with regards to the psychic story. Do you remember the Telvanni like living spaces and how
Yes.
all of their towers are kind of based around the common acceptance that people important will be able to cast levitate on themselves.
Oh
Yeah.
God, yeah. This guy
That's-
having to go in through fire escapes and such.
Well,
The handicapped
presumably,
entrance is like a ladder.
presumably, like you need like devices to actually influence telekinesis waves and stuff. But yeah, like there might be some.
Well, not everyone does, is the thing. Some people are just strong enough to do it without the assistant. But so at some point in the story, we do need to have someone in a wheelchair call this guy handicapped.
That's actually kind of cool.
Yeah, but then he needs to levitate away.
Yeah.
He's got like a Professor
his
Xavier.
eyes just glow, and he just goes.
Let's just make sure we put hair on him.
No, not
Yeah.
Professor Xavier in the hover chair.
No, it's or not even a hover chair. Just have them like trigger, flag down a taxi with a thought, wheel their chair back into it without looking as the door pops open, then closes.
Oh man, I feel sorry for you.
You have some money.
I'm not even begging.
No, but that was his goal all along. He needed a few bucks for the bus fare home
Well,
because he can read people.
I
Yeah.
think the biggest question though is everyone being I think that this is a setting where everyone wasn't always psychic. People were only psychic the last couple of generations.
Yeah. So we need a catalyst event. Is that what you're getting at?
We don't need a catalyst event. I just wanted to make sure that when we're establishing, well, what does this say for like religions or culture and stuff, that this wasn't always the way the world was.
Yeah, like this would be Earth, pretty much,
Right.
a
Yeah.
near Earth equivalent.
Yeah. And then, different religions handled it differently. Some said, I don't know. I'm going to say that Catholicism said that this was the next result of man eating the apple.
Yeah, it makes sense. Or
Knowledge of good and evil, knowledge of
knowledge of everything. Or
Yeah. or Buddhism became way more popular because they said that this was the influence of a bodhisattva.
yeah, I can see it.
It was just like, I told you.
Yeah, actually,
Scientologists are just
There would be a
blowing
whole
up.
lot of I told yous.
Yeah.
Scientologists are just doing massive damage control. Just scrambling for it.
They're just gone in like months.
No, Scientologists are just really, really quiet while the people in power are just going like, oh, how the fuck do we deal with this?
No, man. All right. So everyone who is in the leadership of that church goes into seclusion, and they appoint Null as their spokesman.
That's not shady at all.
That's actually kind of interesting. That's definitely something you can do with that. I actually remember there was a side quest in the newest Deus Ex game, Mankind Divided.
Oh, you played it? Was it good?
It was like Deus Ex Human Revolution, so yeah, I had fun.
X out of 5.
It's hard for me to say because I'm having a lot of fun, but I'm told that it's like playing the original Deus Ex, except for it ends right when you go to Hong Kong.
3 out of 5. Got it.
Yeah, it's hurt by how short because they chopped it in half so that they could make a second game and sell you DLC.
And the Final Fantasy VII remake is 3 games.
What is this, a young adult novel?
The Hobbit.
Um, what am I thinking of? Anyways,
Does it have anything to do
Deus
with
Ex.
this?
Deus Ex. So in Deus Ex, you find a guy who's behaving strangely, and as you look into it, you discover that a lot of people have gone missing in town. And in the sewers, there is a communal living place where everyone is linked into a group hive mind, kind of. And the guy who's controlling it is brainwashing them to think that they're living in like a little utopian like thing that's not a place in the sewers. And he uses his mind influencing technology and practices to make it so that your character's stubborn, so you don't get controlled, but you cannot draw your weapons while you're under the influence. So the whole thing becomes you need to find a way to nullify the influence and then confront him, or you need to find a way to one of the things you can do is he doesn't let himself be influenced by the group hive mind, so you can go up to a place where auto turrets are, jump out of the way so it shoots down the door he's hiding behind, and then go beat him up. But my favorite is disabling the array, and then you have to verbally disconnect everyone from the hive mind. You have to exert enough opposition to him that people start thinking for themselves and freeing themselves. I don't know. It's definitely something we could work in with the setting. Stuff like that.
All right.
A confrontation with a cult like this, a hive mind cult led by a null who's a puppet of these people in power.
So we have mentioned sort of the criminal element, and then of course the cultist element. Would a hive mind cult, need to kidnap people? Like, would it be in their best interest to kidnap people to expand their hive mind?
Well, the question is, could they recruit? I mean, they can probably do a pretty convincing, all of us are in perfect bliss all the time display, especially, I mean, if you assume their psychic power is additive.
It depends on how monstrous they are. I'm also reminded of an old sci-fi story. I don't remember the name of it, but it's about people living on different planets, and the planet Earth is like a quarantine zone because Earth's become a hive mind, and any people who go near Earth are snatched away by ships from Earth, and those people are just turned into raw material for the hive mind.
Right.
So
just had
some country might be completely hive mind.
Had an idea. So we had talked about the criminal element, how our null is kind of, I'm one of the, not a made man, but just kind of one of their guys.
Foot soldier.
Yeah. What if the criminal element exists, established, and persevered, didn't change too much through the in psychic-ing of the world, and then all of these cults are showing up, and now one of the cults is actually encroaching in on their turf. This results in some stuff. We allow our story to have both the criminal element and the cultist element and the establishment element fighting against both of them, putting them in there. I think that would be a strong setup for the first arc.
All right, how about this? The cult is actually, they're acting as vigilantes. And at first they seem like good guys because, all of us are in perfect bliss. Even if you kill one of us, the others will support their mind, etc., etc. And then it turns out they are kidnapping and brainwashing people. And the reason they're acting as vigilantes is because they're pawns of the establishment.
Ooh,
Deep.
I like that.
Also, maybe say something. Spoiling the shit out of all of this.
Yeah.
So how about we say that hive minds are inherently unstable? That's the reason why, no one is. There aren't a lot of permanent ones because
So
people
it's-
just don't get along that well naturally.
You
So
have to.
It's kind of like
influence them.
an orchestra playing too long. They're gonna fall out.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why the hive mind needs a rotation of fresh bodies.
Silence the discord. And then, of course, technology to boost their signal,
And partial lobotomies for some of their core members.
So we have a question here from the chat. Tandem Gamers. Hi, Nick. I suppose I true named someone, so I got to
put a coin in the jar.
There we go. All right. So Tandem Gamers here asked, would cultists be pawns for something besides their cult?
Really? They're the pawns of fortune.
Yeah. So let's expand on that a little bit. Actually, a thought that occurred to me is how exactly when they're a hive mind, really are they confined down underneath somewhere, holding hands, or can they operate somewhat as a unit out and about, kind of like the Geth, I guess, from Mass Effect?
If they have a sufficiently long range amplifier, which I'm going to say is like a cell phone, then sure, they can, but most of them are still in close range, close contact to maintain their raw strength that allows them to control the operatives who are sent out.
Yeah, imagine we were discussing earlier the kind of aesthetic, and I said, people with forehead jewels and cyber mohawks and stuff. The cultists would definitely have a recognizable amplifier artifact that would almost become the emblematic of their cult. I mean,
Also, all shaven, I'm going to say.
Yeah, shaven heads.
Completely hairless.
Yeah, to put
It's unrelated to the psychic stuff. It's just a cult thing.
Yeah.
we got to shave your heads. It's the rules.
It's hygienic.
Ooh. What about I'm thinking of if you ever played the game 2 Human, silver little wires threaded around their temples.
See if you can find us a screenshot. We'll screencast that.
Yeah.
We can find
Maybe
it.
How about
silver temples?
How about tattoos with amplifying heavy metals in them?
Yeah, you can do that. That'd be kind of like.
Also, they kill you
I
soon.
mean, a little.
Or, you know, they poison you so you got like dark rings under your eyes and other signs of generally not...
Yeah, and that's why, like I mentioned, they need new meat periodically, because a hive mind isn't stable if its membership is static.
Psychic necromancers is a thing brought up
That's
there
a
by
thing-
Tandem Gamers as well.
It's used in XCOM 2 pretty well. Basically, the body can be remotely controlled and influenced by...
Well, actually, I think Tandem Gamers, we talked a little bit about, that was kind of our opening thing here. So you might not have been here earlier, but one of the big inciting factors here is that instead of being murdered or just killed for capital punishment, your mind is like just wiped clean.
You're demolished.
Yeah. So like your consciousness is killed, but your body is still alive. So that you could conceptualize that as a type of zombie, which I guess would be.
Oh man, I got it. The Zeitgeist. Their body is still up, around, and moving and being used by the bad guys, and the main character thinks they're still alive. That's why the Zeitgeist conceals their identity, because you wouldn't believe me if I told you who I was.
I wonder if demolished people are in like menial labor camps, or if they would be reconditioned into like subservient people.
Well, how far do we want them to be reconstructible after they've been demolished? Because we go like the actual zombie route, and then they are just in menial labor, which, depending on the technology level, there wouldn't be a lot of.
Or they're live controlled,
By people in the cloud.
by the conspiracy. They take over these people. They demolish these people. Then they use their bodies to make it seem like
They've become
use them as
productive.
sleeper agents.
Ooh. So that is actually kind of interesting, because it definitely makes the conscious separate from the body. So when you demolish the Zeitgeist, and the Zeitgeist becomes like an entity attached to several different like people, then his body is now a blank slate that is turned into another person, which means there's effectively two of him. That is kind of really cool.
So
Yeah.
I'm getting a little bit confused here about how exactly the Zeitgeist works. So when someone is demolished, their consciousness is killed.
Yes.
The Zeitgeist
Escaped.
He
escaped.
escapes.
So he wasn't killed; he got out, and now he inhabits the executioners
Yeah,
or the bodies of other people who were demolished who like have an open slot.
I'm saying the executioners because they were there.
It
Okay.
also gives us an excuse for having the executioners not get just killed by the hero.
And he's fragmented. So,
Okay, yeah.
like, unless they were all together and near a spare body, he couldn't reformat himself onto it or something.
So-
He was this is a particularly rare thing, because this would get really complicated if a lot of people could do this.
Also, the only reason this guy could do it is it's a side effect of him knowing whatever secret is used to control hive minds. Like, he found some
conspiracy.
deeper information about psychic activity, and in his last moments figured out how to use it to survive being demolished.
Figured out how to ascend through the force and become a force ghost.
Of
Or,
course.
parasitize himself onto other psychics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It truly cast off his.
So, Kale,
flesh
you
suit.
wanted me to send you a link to the 2 human aesthetic they had for Heimdall?
Yeah, sure. I'll check that out. Tandem Gamers has a question there in the chat. See if you can get that.
He says, do the people that control them have a limit number of control? The conspiracy?
Yeah, when you're controlling a body,
Conceivably,
1-to-1.
yeah, or conceivably you can automate large amounts of people to do menial tasks, whatever the conspiracy needs to get done, which they don't necessarily need to get anything done that we can talk about. I mean,
But if you're jumping into someone's body, then maybe it's basically switching your consciousness into someone else so you can use their face.
oh yeah,
So I'm sharing the image from 2 Human. It's kind of.
it's interesting.
It's definitely something we'd want the artists to like incorporate. I think this would be a just small part here of the greater
What they-
thing. Kind of interesting.
What they
though.
did with 2 human was all of the Aesir were actually highly technologically implanted humans. And Heimdall, the Watchman, whose power in Norse mythology was that he could see everything, was essentially the receptionist in heaven. And he's got little cyber implants in his temples that allow him to just keep track of like a billion things at once.
Yeah, Geordie LaForge.
Exactly. But I loved the little cyber thing in his temples that would extend to be little screens over his eyes. And I just thought that the hive mind cult.
Yeah, well, you are a little biased there with eye screens.
Oh, Deus Ex was
Spoiled
cool.
you. It was awesome. Don't
Hey,
judge.
the original Deus Ex didn't have eye screens. It just had people wearing really shitty sunglasses.
Sorry, there's a mod for that. Don't worry.
Yeah, it also had there's no mod to replace the wonderful voice acting. You
So-
old mechogs might have copper wiring to reroute your sense of pain, but I have nerves of steel.
Well, that's not really a good conductor if you think about it.
That's,
Yes.
I mean, really, you're hamstringing yourself there, man. You got to go with silver. It's the only way.
I don't think JC Denton really knows how things work. JC
No.
Denton is just kind of a guy.
It's not-
all right. So is there anything else we need to cover, or can we call this idea sufficiently thrown together?
I think it's good. Like I want to work on it now. I mean, see if I can get
You-
some of the artists to sketch up a couple things. Like
We feel like that at the end of every episode.
Yeah, but it's awesome. And this
Point of the
one's
show.
cool.
I really like this one. And
Yeah.
not just because it's psychic. Yeah, okay, mostly because it's just psychic, but it's definitely unlike a lot of the punk attempts at making like new punk genres. There's a lot of stories that could just be told from the concept. It's not just a surface dress. Like,
Yeah, we made a robust setting.
Or at least, a skeleton from which one could be built.
Yeah.
Yep.
True. We'd have to actually make something first, but we could definitely do that.
I kind of want to write some stuff.
Well, hey, you can help. Like you can do that. We can coordinate. This is what Easter egg project is for. We got artists, we got writers. We can all work together. All right. Well,
I form the head.
wait.
My job is just to shit gold. You guys actually do stuff with it.
We're psychic. All right. Well, that was great. So that was Lando, Jonan, D-Man, Surrealism, and Kale the Quick here. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think anymore. We're sounding bored. Thank you for watching. We'll be back on the 11th of next month. You have a fantastic evening. Everybody else as well.
Good night, everyone.